want to overwhelm you with information and stuff here. Especially you're 11 years old. You've got a lot of potential, especially looking through this data here. This is one of the videos I was really excited to make. So I'm going to cover some high-level stuff real quick, and then I'm going to show you something really exciting at the end that I briefly showed you during our session. Fantastic adjustment that you made with your landing foot. But I'm going to show you some data stuff first, all right? So you've got a lot of pitches, all right? You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different pitches at 11 years old, and you throw them all pretty well, all right? So this is your release spray chart. So this is all of the pitches that you threw today, where they plot on the release. So you have a very high release point, okay? I don't want to say you have a high arm slot, because that's not the case, and I'll get to that. I'm sure somebody at some point has probably told you do have a high arm slot, but you actually don't, even though you have a high release point. So if we're looking at this chart right here, this is the midline of your body, and this is where you're releasing it. And so really the main thing that I look for on here is I want it to look like a blob, okay? Because I don't want one certain pitch coming, say, from here, and another pitch coming from here, because then the batter's going to pick that up, all right? And especially at the level that you play for your age, they're going to start picking that up, right? My son is a year ahead of you, and at your age, he was starting to notice that kind of stuff, all right? So that's really good. Movement spray chart. So, like I said, you've got 5 pitches. You have 5 pitches that spin differently. However, you're not getting a lot of drastic movement difference in these. And that's something that we could talk about at our next session. Really, I'd want to see more of a shape out of this. All right, and I could zoom in a little bit to it, make it a little bit bigger. And you can kind of see here now where that area is shaded in. For somebody with so many different pitch types, that really should be a little bit bigger of a shaded area, right? And what this is showing is your movement matrix. So this spot right here represents the midline break point. So it takes gravity out of it, all right? Everything that you've got taking gravity out of it, the spin that you're putting on the ball, you're not going to get a lot of vertical out of it drop, okay? Which is something that we can work on and address, all right? Next slide. So I briefly talked to you about the 8 mile an hour window that for the batter's attention window, right? Plus or minus 4 miles an hour. So if we look over here, here's your different pitch types, all right? We're going to look at the averages instead of the max, because the max is just one pitch, right? So when we talk about pitch sequencing and stuff down the road closer to your season, we want to see a much bigger difference in the miles per hour, okay? So if you throw a 55 mile an hour cutter for the first pitch, and let's say it's low and away, all right, right-hand batter, low and away, the next pitch you throw, if it's anywhere near low and away, needs to either be 51 miles an hour or lower, or 59 miles an hour and higher. Otherwise, it has like a 7% more likelihood of being put in play. Okay. Sometimes we want the ball put in play, right? If our pitch count's getting up, our inning pitch count's getting up, we don't want to run up the pitch count and try to strike everybody out. We want to pitch to contact. So you can use that to your advantage for those situations, right? Like, if the goal, based on what I saw today, the goal for you is going to be like 13 pitches or less per inning on average. The first inning, if you're at 20 pitches and you've only got 1 out, for example, which happens a lot at your age, you kind of want the batter to put the ball in play, because it can get you out on 1 pitch, as opposed to trying to strike everybody out, right? And that's a conversation I've had with some of my big league guys that are power pitchers that throw over 100 miles an hour. Hey, like, sometimes you can't be the strikeout pitcher, sometimes you got to pitch to contact and get the ground ball to get a double play and get yourself out of the inning so you can go deeper into the game, right? And so that could be one way that we play it, but on a more consistent, like general level, we want to see more difference here for your pitch selections, right? So your average fastball, 53, average cutter, 55, and we only threw a couple cutters and a couple sliders. I understand that, so we don't have a big selection. This is, like I said, I'm going high level, looking long term where we want to be, right? There needs to be a bigger difference here in your velos, because like right now, for example, a 54 mile an hour changeup and a 53 mile an hour. Let's use your maxes, all right? So a 56 mile an hour fastball and a 55 mile an hour changeup. If it plots the same over here on the direction and on the gyro degree, and then if we look over at the movement matrix, if it's similar, then that changeup is really just a bad fastball as far as batter's concerned. So we really need to take some speed off of that, and we brushed on curling the toes, and we can play around with the grip. We can move the ball back in the hand a little bit. There's plenty of ways we can take some speed off of that. That'll just take a little bit of work. All right, now for the really cool thing that I was really impressed today. All right, so let's go down. I'm gonna go to your third pitch because it was a good pitch, and it was the first one I recorded from behind the back view. All right. Again, good result on this pitch. All right, let's watch it play first. All right, that's a strike. Okay, and you can see right here, plus on the upper left. All right, now what I want to point out. Okay, 55.5 miles an hour, 76.6 efficiency. All right, your total spin, and I should have looked at this before. Your total spin is 1246. All right, so let's remember that. Okay, now let's go back, and I want you to watch your front foot where it lands. All right, right. There's your land. Now, can you see that front foot? No, right? And I eventually drew that line in the dirt, and we talked about you're landing too far off to that side of it, so now the hips and the torso aren't going to be able to fully rotate at your release point. And you can see here, right there, you're having to go up and over. Here's your release, all right? Now, if you watch the angle of your belt, you can tell that your hips aren't fully rotated, right? And it's because that foot's over here and you're having to go around it. You're compensating by getting the shoulders in that position right there, all right? So remember where that foot was. We're on the far right side of your line. 55 miles an hour. The big things to look at: 55 miles an hour, 76.6 efficiency. Okay. All right. So now I want to go look at when we made that change. I believe it was this. Yeah. So it was the last fastball that registered. Okay. Let's pull this one up. All right. Now, you barely missed the strike zone on this, right? That could be a strike. It may be not. It's like right on the low and outside to a righty spot. Okay. However, we're up over a mile an hour, and our efficiency is way higher. Okay. So for a true fastball, we want to see a spin efficiency up above 95. Okay. And what that is, I had a baseball sitting here. Okay. And I briefly talked about it today, right? If I'm throwing this ball towards you, all right, you're kind of cutting it slightly. So you're releasing it at this angle as opposed to being behind it here. All right, so that's the difference. So as it's coming towards you, the way you're releasing it, you're getting the spin like this as opposed to the spin like this. All right, so the ball went faster, right? The higher the spin efficiency, the more of the spin is being used to project the ball in its direction. All right. So the interesting thing here that I want to point out, you gained over a mile an hour. all right, your spin efficiency went up significantly, your total spin went down, okay? But because that efficiency went up, your velocity was able to go up, all right? And a reason that all of this happened, all right, let me play it. We'll watch it through and then I'll rewind it and we'll go frame by frame. All right, mechanically, that looked very different, right? That, I mean, if you changed your clothes, that's going to look like a completely different picture. And what happened on it was, I pointed out you were landing to the far right. In like 2 pitches, you made the correction, which is incredible, especially at your age. And you were able to get completely open. Okay, so I'm standing the same exact spot as I was on that first one. And here at foot strike, you can see that whole shoe where before that shoe was being blocked by this leg. All right, so that is about a 2-inch difference on your land. And now let's look at the release of the ball. Back up 1 frame. You can look at the belt. Now that belt, the hips, you can tell your hips are completely lined up with that plate and you're getting everything in line. Now, that's fantastic, okay? I'm really happy with that change. The thing that I mentioned earlier, saying that you have a high release point but not a high arm slot. All right, and this is just for your educational purpose, so nobody tries to change it without you understanding what it is. It's not something I'm going to change at 11 years old. All right. Ball is directly in line with where your main line was, where your midline. All right. So meaning, if I were to take this lean and bring your shoulders even with the ground, you're not going to have a high arm slot. That's actually almost like a 3/4 arm slot. Okay. And when I'll face the camera to try to explain it a little bit better. Okay. So for me, my arm slot, my release is right about here. Okay. However, if I tilt my torso like you do, notice how now I've got that high spot, that high release point. If I'm here, my shoulder angle is not changing at all. Okay. So where this can be an advantage for you, and something that we'll talk about at some point during the next couple sessions, this position here can get you a really nasty 12-6 curveball. All right, think about, and Kershaw's from a lefty, but this is a very similar position to Clayton Kershaw. Okay, where all you've got to do with that curveball, and I'm not going to use a ball, so because I want you to kind of see the 3D. So imagine I've got a ball here, right? For that curveball, if you're here with it and you spin it and get the hand directly down, the fingers in front of that ball, and put the top spin on it, that ball drops. And if we go back to that movement chart that I showed you up here, you don't have a pitch that's below that line. And that 12-6 curveball would put you, if I make that back to normal size, okay, that 12-6 curveball would put a ball down here for you. And that's really kind of what you're missing, is something down here. All right, so something that we can look at, and I definitely don't want you to have 6 pitches at 11, okay? Really 3 or 4 is all you really need at your age. I mean, obviously having 5 is going to be a benefit, but we want to make sure that there's enough difference between the pitches and the movement, and starting out to get you a ball that's going to plot down here is going to get you on the right path, right? And so just to explain that chart a little bit more, because a lot of people don't understand it, the center of this XY axis is the point at which the ball starts to break. Now, this factors out gravity, okay? So all this factors in is the direction that the spin of the ball is going. So a fastball is going to have backspin. So right, fastball is coming towards you. All right, as it spins, the air on top of the ball is going to be going over and behind it. The air that's down here gets stuck and is going to push the ball up. Now, we have gravity, so gravity is going to counter that, and the ball is going to kind of go straight. Okay? But because this factors out gravity, a ball that's spinning like this without gravity is going to rise. And that's why hitters are told to get backspin on the ball if they want to hit a home run. Okay? So the opposite is the 12-6 curve, where you're going to be pulling down on the front of it, right? And so that's going to put this spin on the ball, where the air underneath it is just going to go back and come up the backside, and the air that's here on the top gets stuck and is going to start pushing it down. Now, add gravity into that, you're going to get it pulling down more. So that's kind of what this is telling us. That 12-6 curveball would be down here. So, for example, Kershaw's would plot probably right about here. All right, and I think that would be a pitch to add to what you've got over here, or I guess maybe kind of turn one of these pitches into that, because these are all really similar, and you don't need 5 very similar pitches. You need something massively different. All right, so really good stuff on the first session. Great adjustment on the foot placement. When you throw at practice over this next week, or when you're throwing at home or whatever, I really want you to work on focusing on that landing position in line and not landing off to the right. All right, but I will see you next time. Great job today.